Welcome, fans, to In the Know. I got Mason with me. We're going to talk about the litany of decisions the Pelicans made as deadlines approached on various player options, and just what they're going to be doing in the future. We talked about Herb Jones. I talked about Herb Jones already, but this is with regards to the rest of the rosters. So tune in. What's up, Mason? I know you've been following with bated breath what the Pelicans were going to do with Naji Marshall and Garrett Temple and Willy Hernangomez. And did I miss somebody? I think I didn't miss anybody.
No.
Oh, yeah. So that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. To recap, for the folks out there, the Pelicans have moved Garrett Temple's guaranteed date. They've pushed it into I believe next week, sometime past the free agency period is opening. The Temple contract was set to guarantee on the 30th, so they're buying themselves more time. Let's talk about that briefly, Mason. What does it signal to you when the Pelicans are pushing back Temple's $5 million contract guarantee date?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to take these moves in conjunction. So I think now that that Temple decision happened a little earlier, and now we've got the Herb news where it signals the Pelicans are looking to extend him and really increase that salary amount now. And so I think it is interesting, those two things happening together, because you would think, and intuition quickly would tell you, if you're going to remove Herb's $2 million contract and replace it with something that's 8 figures. So it's interesting, right? And so I think more than anything, it's just the chance to have a more calculated decision. And with Garrett Temple, it's like, what is his other option, right? If the Pelicans ask him to do this and he says no, they're just not going to guarantee the money. And so this is probably Garrett Temple's best move, because he's not going to make that on the open market. So yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it buys them more time. And if there's a trade that presents itself where they can package Temple and Jonas and take on a player who maybe is making a little bit less than those two combined, you've given some options already that they think fits this team better. Why not, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think they would support Temple making his full $5 million elsewhere, not on this roster. If a trade doesn't materialize, I would not be shocked to see Temple come back on a veteran minimum. His veteran minimum is actually not that far from the $5 million that he's slated to make. But the cool thing about vet minimums is they're subsidized by the league. And so they only count against the cap as, I believe, a second, 2 years of service type of player. So would not be surprised to see that happen. Moving on, the Pelicans did not offer Jaxson Hayes a qualifying offer. The qualifying offer would have been for $7.7 million. I think this should not come as a surprise to anybody. Firstly, if I'm Jaxson Hayes, I'm taking that money the second it's on the table. There's no way anyone's going to give me $7.7 million in free agency. So I would have taken that if I was him. And the Pelicans smartly did not do that, because had he taken that $7.7 million, they would have been in the tax. And going into the tax, because Jaxson Hayes opted into his qualifying offer, would have been quite disastrous. I do think the door is open for Jaxson to return on a minimum contract again. That the Pelicans have roster spots. If nothing else shakes, there's something maybe they can work out. But I do not foresee any kind of long-term deals for Mr. Jaxson Hayes.
No, I'd rather go get the center of the Lakers just cut ties with, and I'd rather take a flyer on Bamba than take a flyer on Jaxson Hayes. He might still go back to the Lakers. I think jury's still out on that, but yeah, I mean, I think this has kind of run its course. The Pelicans do have, especially given the next guy we'll talk about, they do have a kind of a gap or a lack of bigs right now, as far as folks who have guaranteed salary, and so that's going to be a focus for them, I think, in the coming days and weeks. But yeah, I think no, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Yep, as you astutely noted, the Pelicans did not pick up Willy Hernangomez's team option. Means he will be an unrestricted free agent. I'm not exactly sure where he finds a home, but I'm sure some team will cherish him. Probably not at a long-term deal. Again, not really surprising of a move for a team that is brushed up right next to that tax line. I think the hope was, maybe they can lump his salary into a trade deal and reach a bigger number. But I think as soon as the Herb stuff started to materialize, some of those trade discussions where you're bringing back a significantly more money than you're sending out are no longer a feasibility. And so I think the Pelicans are doing what they can to give themselves breathing room under the tax. The final guy I wanted to touch on was Naji Marshall. Mason, they picked up his option around $1.8 million. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's the obvious move, right? And so I think the distinction, we were chatting about this before the pod, was that, with Naji, if you don't pick it up, or he would be a restricted free agent if you don't pick it up. And then versus next year, now he's unrestricted. And so there was a calculus there. I would say maybe they gauge the market on Naji, and if they think that any team's going to offer him more than the minimum or a contract that makes them pause, just give him the money. Maybe they end up trading him this offseason. I mean, I think there are a lot of options with what you can do with Naji, but I think what you can't do is give him you couldn't give him a sizable pay raise at this juncture. That's the one thing that couldn't happen.
Yeah, I still think there's a possibility he can be used in as a trade smoothing type of contract, something that's a little bit of a throw in. I don't think that he's this immensely valuable player, but for $1.8 million, he does a lot, and you can kind of plug him into any kind of situation. And I think that's attractive for teams. And by all accounts, he's a good locker room guy, and the players love him. And if there's not a trade materializing, having him around for $1.8 million doesn't break your back either. If that is a contract, they can easily get out from under if they really needed that extra space, and which they might end up needing. They really might end up needing that space given potential moves that might be on the horizon. We don't know what's going to happen yet. We can only just kind of look at the numbers and guesstimate. Again, I talked about in the previous video, they probably are not going to make moves where they take on a lot more money unless they have some kind of authorization to go in the tax that we don't know about.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe you look down the roster of guys who could move, and besides Jonas, I don't really know who else, because if you move Jonas, then you're really out of bigs so you're definitely not moving Larry Nance, right? And so beyond that, you're looking at guys in kind of the 7-figure salary range, not 8 figures. And so not a lot of moves you can really do to create significant breathing room.
Absolutely. So we will watch, just as you guys will be watching, to see what the Pelicans do next. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with breaking down whatever they end up doing.